Alright, I made this video before, and I took it down because people did not understand my point, and I am still upset about it, because nobody gets it. Nobody understands my claim. So we're gonna get really into it this time so that it's very abundantly clear what my point is and why I am radical in every sense of the word compared to that of everybody else in the party. All right. So, both actual Jake. One second here. Actual Jake on YouTube and what's the other guy's name? I want to make sure I'm sending you guys to the right sources here. The Surf Times. So it's capital THE, and then Surf is SERF. The Surf Times both of these people made a video pretty much summing up kind of my point, but not entirely, so I need to make my own because they're not saying what I really need them to be saying. So here we go. Shoeonhead claims to be a leftist, and this is unequivocally false. She is a grifter and has embarrassingly lame-brained, completely simplistic, virtue-signaling, moral dilemma type arguments, and barely does any research on whatever it is she's covering, and just kind of panders to her audience in a way that it's very clear that she's not a progressive and she is not a leftist. I am not a progressive or leftist either, but I'll get into why my definition is the way it is in a second here. Gosh, I really can't do two things at once because my brain is far too stupid to do it. So I'm gonna have to ult on these guys really quick. Just so I can, get my point across. Alright, so, I fall into the category of possibly... I love you. Possibly a liberal extremist or progressive extremist. And the reason why I'm in that category is because I, there are a ton of other people who lean to the left politically and then also do what I do. So I don't know if there's more than me out there. But given everything I know about history and everything I know about the Republican Party, where it originated from, which was the Dixiecrats, and then they moved on over to the Republican Party, and the old Republicans moved on over to the Democratic Party, all of that stuff. So there was a huge shift in what each party stood for and who was a part of each party at those times. that nobody seems to remember or care about. And but the Southern white nationalist rhetoric and agenda has been going on for a long time. And so this is ages of violence against minorities, against people who are trying to undergo the sexual revolution, against women, against black women specifically, against black men specifically. They did gelding. If you don't know what that is, look that up. They did all sorts of just horrendous things. And at every possible juncture and every turn, when what I call the Reds have done anything that could be construed as destructive to the overall system and the overall way that politics is conducted, every single time you would think, oh, maybe finally they'll grow a backbone, maybe finally they'll do the right thing. And every single time, without fail, they always choose wrong. Great example, Ted Cruz. 100% only chooses to do the right thing when it's politically convenient to do so. And in all other circumstances, will choose wrong. Mitch McConnell always chooses wrong. Chris Hannity, Josh Hawley, who else are on the list of people I hate? And that's what it is. It's the rhetoric of hate. And so, let me just get into why I'm saying all this. So the point is, my position is that you can shoot people and kill them, but there was this, who's this quote by? This quote is a really good quote because it proves my point in spades, and it makes Shoe look like an absolute moron. So let's get into it. So, here we go. The English author and playwright Edward Bulwer Lytton, in the 1839 play Richelieu, or The Conspiracy, in the play, Cardinal Richelieu declares, "The pen is mightier than the sword." So this is an age-old quote that I had in the back of my mind that I was introduced to in college, but then completely forgot about because I read so much and was introduced to so much. Like, they were weaponizing smallpox and putting them on quilts and then using that to infect the Native Americans and try to commit biological genocide that way, using it as a bioweapon. One of the more popular Jubilee left-wing debater girls was trying to say that it was chemical warfare, which isn't technically correct because it's not using a chemical, it's using a virus or a viral methods to do it rather than chemical, like using gas like the Nazis did. But it's still kind of the same concept of using something using something of that nature, may it be chemical or bio, to kind of eradicate a specific sect of people. And so this isn't a new concept. And there are constant examples of people on the right, and especially the far right, that advocate for pro-Nazi ideas, They advocate for genocide. They advocate against minorities. They advocate against LGBTQ. They advocate for rejoining church and state, so legislating that schools should show the 10 Commandments in the schools, stuff like that. So they're all about control, and they're all about population control specifically. And this has been going on for ages. So Shu comes out with this video about Kirk's death and includes a montage of people celebrating Kirk's death. And to anybody who is familiar with anything he's ever said, you could very easily argue that he is using words to legislate death. And the party that he represents and supports also uses words to kill people, just like you could use a gun. So you can use words just as effectively to kill people as you can use a gun. And then she does bring up the healthcare CEO. And the healthcare CEO, what does he do with words to legislate death? Let's take a look. So, how does he use words? Well, he uses documents, and the documents say that you don't get to have coverage because we want money. And it's all about profit, and it's not about care. And so, by doing that, real people die. Isn't that crazy? And does she outcry that at all? No. She doesn't ever bother to admit that the CEO, the healthcare CEO, is a social murderer. This is a very amazing concept that I was taught by listening to a bunch of left-wing talking people. Again, go watch the Surf Times video because it's really close, but not quite where I'm at. So anyway, my point is that Charlie is one in a long list of people that use rhetoric in a way that is intended for controlling the populace, controlling thoughts, controlling the minds of people. And how do they do this? Well, here's one fun example I like to bring up. A lot of the times I see people like Adam Mockler going on the news and saying, hey, I totally own this MAGA person. But then when you watch the video, half of the time they just sit there in silence because they're getting cut off by the right-winger. So the right-winger hears some stuff that is true, and then because it's true, their number one tactic is to just speak over the opponent and overwhelm them with sound so that they can't make a cohesive argument at all. And then by doing that, they also are then silencing their opponent. And this is a great strategy because you can use your words to silence others and to censor others by simply just talking over them and being obnoxious and being a man-child. Now, the left will then point out how this doesn't really work very well in the court of opinion. But I actually would argue that it works actually really well because the main majority of the populace is so uneducated and so illiterate that all you have to do to convince them is to be louder. And that's it. So you've lost as the left-wing talking person because you've allowed the right-winger to do that. If the right-winger ever gets a chance to overwhelm you with sound in the argument, you've lost, and it's over. You haven't convinced anybody, and everybody who already leans right is just going to go further right. Anyone who already leans left is still going to support, like, obviously they're still going to support their guy, but anybody who's in the middle is also going to lean right because they're like, well, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about because he's just louder. So that's one example. Another example is they stand in the way of any legislation that the opposition tries to propose. They do not work for a compromise. They do anything in their power to stand in the way of justice. So one example of this would be that Trump was already impeached twice, and both times all of the Republicans unanimously voted not to convict, which was just them protecting his ass when everybody knew that the facts were already laid out that he needed to be impeached and convicted. But because it was done while in office, those morons decided, nah, we're just going to protect him. Even though there's overwhelming evidence against this guy, we're going to do it anyway, just because he's our guy. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the legislation that has to do with taking away people's Medicaid, which will happen post the midterms. And the reason why they timed it for post the midterms is because they wanted to be able to use it as a way of saying, hey, look, if the midterms go really poorly and for them and they lose and the Democrats win the midterms, they can then turn around and say, hey, this is the Democratic legislation that led you to losing your health care. So that was the plan. The plan is to, even if they lose, they still have enough political points to convince their base that it's the Democrats that took away your health care. So that's another way that they can use rhetoric to not only kill people, but then blame it on the opposition as well. And so when you see non-stop instances of actual violence that is taking place and actual deaths that are taking place, and all of it is caused by simply just saying the right thing at the right time and nothing more, it's no wonder that starving people who are suffering and people who are angry that they're being ostracized and outed and othered constantly forever, and are in every waking moment of their life being made out to be the 99-cent store She-Hulk. In every scenario, they're going to shop and they're getting mean looks. They're logging into iFunny and seeing thousands of comments everywhere talking about how they need to be put down and that these things are walking around and shouldn't be alive. And you're reading stuff like that and thinking to yourself, oh, these people aren't going to pick up a gun and shoot whoever it is that's propagating this kind of stuff. They're not going to get angry and violent back. They're not going to fight back. So we're just going to keep flinging rocks at these people. And then the second they pick up a rock and try to fight back, now we're going to play victim. And it's like, oh, now we're being persecuted. Even though you guys were the ones doing all the persecution. The second somebody stands up and says enough is enough, now all of a sudden it's a problem. And so that's what makes me a radical, is that I am in the category of people who celebrate Kirk being dead, because I've had some time to stew it over, and he and his rhetoric led to the direct deaths of people. I may not be able to say definitively that I have 100% proof that Charlie said something and then that in turn resulted in a direct death statistically, but I can say that him and his party and his rhetoric and everyone who follows it, somebody somewhere died because of it. And it may not be directly his fault, but indirectly it still is very much his fault. And so trans people have died, elders have died, you name it, somebody has died. 1 million Americans died because of the politicization of the COVID vaccine. And I have seen firsthand people in my own social networks propagating this idea that vaxxers are the cause of autism, which is ridiculous, because I know just enough about ABA and the now I'm going to get ostracized for even saying it. The DCISM, or whatever, the book that most psychologists and will use. All of the current science about spectrum disorder is that we don't know what causes it. So to say that there is a definitive cause, like Tylenol, because our president's a fucking moron, is not correct, because that would indicate that enough studies and enough peer review have been done to find a direct causational link between something and spectrum disorder, which is untrue, because as of the current science, there is no direct link between anything as a cause for autism. So that shit is 100% false, and that alone, that kind of misinformation alone, leads to deaths. Not on autism specifically, but I'm saying that that tactic that they're using leads to deaths. They use that tactic all the time in every moment of all of our waking lives, and they're convincing the idiots who don't bother even opening Google for half a second to try to make sure that this is true. Either that, or they're controlling their algorithms to make it so that they 100% for sure cannot find resources that tell them that this kind of shit is untrue. Whatever the case. But the main point is that the population is being mind controlled in every sense of the word. They're paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to make sure your YouTube algorithm shows you right-wing content. They're everywhere. They're in your gym bro content. Every single gym influencer is a MAGA. 100%. Carly JB is a MAGA. The Trend Twins are a MAGA. Bradley Cooper's a MAGA, or Bradley whatever his fucking name is. I thought it was Cooper, but maybe it's not Cooper. Bradley whatever is a MAGA. Joe Rogan is a MAGA. You know, every single influencer that you can think of that's in the workout, get healthy hemisphere is lying to you and grifting. They're all on roids, and they're all a bunch of liars, and they're all MAGA. Jake Paul, and his stupid ass brother, who I can't remember the name of off the top of my head right now because I don't give a shit enough. You name it. And so my main point is that Shoe is completely ignoring every instance where the Republicans and the Republican Party and the right wing side of the political hemisphere has legislated death, has used rhetoric to cause death, has killed people with their words, and used the pen as if it is a sword. She has completely glossed over that. And so actual real people have died, and she is 100% not acknowledging that whatsoever. Now, on to the every time a right-winger has shot up a huge amount of people. Tons of resources are out there that show you statistically, overwhelmingly, that political violence is way more prevalent on the right than the left. People like Jesse Waters, Scott, I think his name's Scott Jennings, idiot MAGA morons like these people will sit on their news platform and tell their audience that it's actually the left-wingers that do all the violence and the right-wingers do none of it. They will sit there and say that lie directly to your face. And Shoe's video is yet another virtue-signaling moral panic, talking about how she literally admits that she is the female Charlie Kirk. Her takes are pretty much tantamount to Tim Pool's takes, and then claims to be a leftist, and then tries to say, oh no, we're left-leaning on all these different policies. It's bullshit. She is a bullshit peddler and a pretty face, and that is it. And but in reality, she is doing tremendous damage by claiming that she's a leftist and on the progressive side of the political hemisphere. She is not. She is not a progressive. She's not a leftist. You're not a part of the movement. The video you put out on Kirk proves this. And so now I'm going to say, this other point. So when people who are, generally speaking, very evil and either legislate death through pen or legislate death through guns, or you name it, whatever it be, as long as they're getting their evil agenda to work and that people are dying, it's working. It's working for them. And so any people that do that deserve to have a celebration from people when they finally bite the bullet, when they're finally gone. So anyway, so that's my point. So when you see people walking around like Hitler 2.0, and then they all play victim and say, oh no, we're definitely not those people, even though we celebrate Nazi rhetoric and we talk about how great the Nazis were every time we get the chance, but we're not Nazis or anything like that. Nobody buys that shit. You are absolutely fucking lying. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to your friends and family. You're a 100% liar, and we all know it because the rhetoric that you use and the tactics you use lead to the direct deaths of many, many, many people, and it's only going to get worse from here. And so we got tired of it, and somebody, whoever it was, I actually don't think it was even Tyler, because there's new footage that shows that another person also had a good angle and seemed to be armed, and it looked like their angle was the actual true shot that was taken on Charlie. So there's enough in the Range Day Bro video, enough to prove that Tyler probably didn't do it and is just probably using this as a I did it too kind of moment so that he can look just as cool as Luigi Mangione or whoever. And I also doubt that Luigi did it too. I think that both of them are patsies that just wanted to become famous, and this was the way to do it, and now they're going to go down. Whatever happens to them, they'll be known forever as the people who did it. But in reality, the real culprits who actually did it got away. It's a great strategy, because if you're going to go off a major public figure, having a patsy is a great idea, because now everybody's looking at them and nobody's looking at you. So I feel like it has to be that, but that's my own little moment of being a tinfoil hatter. But the main point I'm trying to say is, when you go and cry wolf on your social media platform about how it's just absolutely a moral pandemic that people would celebrate the death of somebody like Kirk, and how unacceptable that is, it's ridiculous. It's an absolutely ridiculous claim, because he's evil. He's an evil person. So you're telling me that I can't celebrate the deaths of evil people? So I'm not allowed to celebrate the death of Hitler? So I'm not allowed to celebrate the death of Stalin? So I'm not allowed to celebrate when Saddam Hussein died or when Bin Laden died? I can't celebrate any of that, because that is what I feel like Charlie Kirk is. I saw him as a 100% evil, diabolical asshole who used rhetoric to kill people. He may not have done it himself. You might not be able to draw a direct causational link between something he said and an actual death, but his rhetoric protected the administration that does, and does do that. And there is a direct causational link between that administration or the Republican Party and death. There's absolutely 100% proof that the Republican Party killed people. It is plain as day. And if you don't see it, then you're part of the problem. And so that's my point, is that Shu made this video crying wolf and didn't even acknowledge the Melissa Hortman assassination. Didn't acknowledge the Melissa Hortman assassination, didn't acknowledge the Nancy Pelosi attacks, didn't acknowledge the numerous other examples of mass shootings that were all done by right-wing extremists. I think the stat was like 63% is done by the right wing, and then the next most prominent political violent group is jihadists or something like that. That's what they were saying. Like it was 23% after that of that. Liberals aren't even liberals, leftists, and progressives. People who are truly like Luke Beasley. I'll say Luke Beasley is a leftist progressive. I'm not. I am a leftist progressive extremist who does believe that you should celebrate when evil people die. Luke is not, because he's a kind person and is way too much of a doormat to ever adopt a position like that. And then probably would even publicly decry me for doing so. So that's why I'm not lumping myself in with them either. I know my place. My place is with the... I am a staunch Aries. I believe in warfare against people who are evil, and I think that if you're an evil person, you deserve to die. And no exceptions. And if I ever turn to the dark side or become evil, I believe I should die as well. I'm not an exception to the rule. If I do some evil, diabolical shit, absolutely I deserve to die. Absolutely. So does everybody else who does anything diabolical that I think is absolutely morally corrupt. And that is who Charlie Kirk is, and that is why my position is that. You don't have to like me, you don't have to like my position, you don't have to like my arguments, you can hate me and decry me all you want, but the point that she's making this all about herself and about Kirk and then pretending she's a leftist is absolutely poppycock, and the people who come out and say, Shoe did a great job and that video was amazing, and that her take is refreshing and nuanced and well researched and well thought out. Those people are also drinking the Kool-Aid and absolutely aren't leftists or progressives either. Anybody who is a true leftist or progressive will see what she said and go, no, this is absolutely an unacceptable response to the Kirk situation. It's absolutely unacceptable to be allowing somebody like that any sort of credence. And the fact that they not only lowered the flag to half staff, which was an absolute insult to every time they've ever done that to anybody else, but on top of that are trying to give him some sort of peace prize and treating him like a martyr, even though all of the facts suggest that he isn't one, because he was killed by somebody who is essentially apolitical. So it wasn't about politics at all. It was, I don't know what it was about, but it definitely didn't have anything to do with the fact that he was a leftist. There's no way Tyler Robinson is a leftist or a progressive, because my argument is that a true leftist and a true progressive, not me, don't lump me in with those people, true leftists and progressives don't go around shooting people. It's just not part of their moral system. It's not part of their value system. It goes against everything they stand for. Political violence on the left is non-existent. I'm willing to argue that it's non-existent because anybody who believed in the leftist agenda or believes in what progressive ideals are will not commit violence. That's just not how it works. You can't be progressive and then also commit violence. It's not something that is in the progressive playbook, and you can't label anyone who's a true progressive as also violent. Did AOC ever go around shooting anybody? No. Did Jasmine Crockett go around shooting anybody? No. Did any Democratic politician ever in the history of America go around shooting people? No. So it's not something that any progressives or any liberals or anybody on the left will ever do, and any time that it does happen, all of those people will do a public outcry and say it's the worst thing ever and violence isn't the answer, and you name it. My position is opposed to that. I believe truly that There are only good people, and only the good people should be alive. I believe in Light Yagami and his mission to cleanse the planet of evil. I would have been Kira. If I had gotten the Death Note, I would have been Kira. He's absolutely right. I don't care how devolved he got towards the end and how much a game it all was to him at the end. He still had a point. Getting rid of evil people is a good decision, and the fact that people are outcrying it and trying to make it into a moral dilemma when everything he ever said resulted in indirect deaths is absolutely poppycock, and I don't support the people who are trying to pretend like that isn't what was going on. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. Shu is an embarrassment and is not a progressive, and so stop believing she is, and that's my point. Have a good one.